45 metres back. Bernard Foley. It's got the legs. It's got the legs. The distance. Over!
Hi there, and welcome to Pick and Drive Rugby. We are the People's Podcast, providing a platform for rugby lovers to come together and support the game that's played in heaven. I'm your host, Mitch. Join me this week is Ando. Ando, you are back after a little bit of sick leave from the podcast. Welcome back.
Yeah, mate, I actually like rugby and enjoy the Western Force as a team. So can you stop bad-mouthing me to the rugby public? Thank you.
I don't think anyone caught that because I haven't heard anything on Twitter, so I think that just went straight through the keeper. So we'll leave it at that. But we're very excited to be joined this week by Brumbies mega fan Steve Lenthall. Steve, how are you, mate? How's everything down in the nation's capital?
Hi, Mitch. Hi, Endo. Yeah, things are good. Just got back from the Brumbies fan day this afternoon, so it's good to catch up and see how everyone's going. As people know, I'm a big fan of Corey Toole, so I got a photo with him, so I'll send that around later. Good to finally get a refund on those $4.95.
Corey hotline falls. Yep.
That's it.
Fantastic. Well, what are we doing this evening, Endo?
Brilliant. Well, mate, we're going to be covering, we'll do the intro, obviously, then do a trivia segment. So Mitch had a bit of a problem last week with the Reds trivia. Struggled a little bit. I'm proud to say that I did do the trivia when I listened back to the pod, and I promise on my honor that I did not cheat, and I got 3. So we need to add that to the points tally. I got 3 out of 5 in that week. Now, Mitch has the opportunity to completely embarrass me because he's created the trivia for the Brumbies, and I'm going up against Steve, who's a mega Brumbies fan. So this is going to be fun. Once we've done the trivia segment, we'll move into our Brumbies preview. But before we go there, I thought it'd be a great opportunity for us to just quickly spruik everybody within Australian rugby getting the membership packages that are on offer from their clubs. So I know that both Steve, myself, and Mitch all are members of the Tars or the Brumbies, and we've got a really great offer for listeners who are in Sydney or New South Wales for you to become New South Wales Waratahs fans or members even. So they have a range of packages to suit everybody, from a full season, 3 games, or a supporter membership if you can't make it to the games. The price range varies massively from $50 for a supporter package to $414 for the full season in the best seats in the house. Pretty sure I got mine for $120 for a 4-game flexi because I know there's a game that I can't make, so it worked incredibly well. They have invites to exclusive member-only events to meet players, coaches. All members receive $50 to spend in the online members store. You do receive pre-sale access to the Wallabies test matches and Waratahs home finals. And all you have to do is visit membership.nsw.rugby to take advantage of that. So I really, really encourage you to get involved. It's super easy. It's pretty affordable for a whole season's membership for what I needed and what I'm available for. It was $120, which is a pretty good deal. So I recommend that you get involved there and go to visit.membership.nsw.rugby as the place to go. Thanks, team. Mitch, back to you.
Fantastic. So this is our Brumbies preview for this week. Now, this, depending on what time you're listening to this podcast and when that is, this is the week that Super Rugby does kick off. So round 1 of Super Rugby 2024 will be taking place this coming weekend. What that means, if you're listening to the podcast on Monday or Tuesday, or even Wednesday, we will have another podcast coming very shortly for you, which is our preview of round 1. So we'll go through all the key matchups. We'll have the team lists by that point, and we will just really get into the actual action that's coming up this weekend. So make sure you're looking out for our feed for that one. And yeah, really excited that we at this point of the season, we've done all our previews up until this point. We've gone through all of the Australian super teams, and we're very, very nearly getting into Super Rugby Pacific for 2024. Ando, you've got one last point before we move on?
Yeah, I do. One thing, we're going to show it up on screen later on in the pod, but we are starting up the Super Rugby tipping competition again. So you can go to www.tipping.super.rugby using the Super Rugby official platform. And our join code, I'm just going to read it out because some people might be doing this on their phone whilst listening to the podcast, is R51WCHOD. R51WCHOD. And that's via the Super Rugby platform. So make sure you get involved and see how good we are at tipping. And it's going to be a load of fun getting the banter going back and forth. So I think that's it. Why don't we dive into the trivia?
Let's get into it. Welcome to our trivia section for the ACT Brumbies. Now, if you are listening to the podcast online, make sure you also do go and check out our YouTube channel, because we do have our graphics for the whole episode up on there, and it might be easier for you with the trivia to be able to read the questions as they come up on screen, as well as follow along on the podcast. But let's dive into it, and hopefully this isn't too easy for you guys. But in question 1, in which year was the ACT Brumbies team formed? So A, we've got 1998, B, we've got 1996, C, 1992, or D, 1994. And I'll go with you first.
It depends if you mean formed or the first year they competed in Super Rugby competition. They were formed in December of 1995 and played in the first comp 1996.
We'll go with what year they
So
competed
B.
then. Steve?
All right, B.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Ando on that one. It's definitely B.
Congrats, both of you. So, Ando, you've already beaten me for last week, so well done.
Get in.
All right. Now, if any of these are incorrect, I
bar.
did find all of these questions online, so we'll just put that out there. But question 2, how many Super Rugby finals have the ACT Brumbies reached? Is it A, 5? Is it B, 11? C, 9? Or D, 7? Steve, what do you think?
Ooh. Now, going back quite a while, there was a bit of a run there at the early 2000s. I think they made 3 in a row. So, because they have obviously have lost a couple. They've got 2 or 3 with an asterisk. So I think it's going to be D7.
Ando, what are your thoughts?
I'm going to go A5.
And the answer is D7. Well done to Steve on that one. Question 3 is a follow-up to that last question. How many Super Rugby finals have the Brumbies won? Is it A, 3? Is it B, 2? Is it C, 1? Or is it D, 4? Ando.
I'm pretty sure it's 2, 2001 and 2004. I think, or maybe it was earlier in 2004. I'm going to go 3, so A.
A. Steve, what are we thinking?
Yeah, it's going to be a trick question because it's Super Rugby, because they've got the 2 of the main comp and then the Super Rugby AU. So it's going to be 3. So A for me.
And the answer is A3. Well done to both of you.
Yeah.
Now, these next 2 questions are a little more tricky. We'll see if Steve knows the answer to them. So the Brumbies have been known to search far and wide for talent. In no position is this more noticeable than a tight head prop. Which of these Brumbies big men were actually born in Australia? Is it A, Nick Henderson, B, Patricio Noriega, C, Ben Darwin, or D, Guy Shepherdson? Ando, you look pretty stumped. So let's go with you first.
Nah, let's go with Steve first. Look,
so was born in Australia is the question.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I feel like the obvious one is Benny Darwin because he's got such a thick Aussie accent, but I feel like he's kind of like a squeak, a Stephen Moore, someone who's born in like Dubai, but is through and through Aussie. And then I'm like, Noriega, wasn't he Argentinian? Yeah. So it's either Henderson or Shepherdson. Both of them sound whatever. Shepherdson, Guy Shepherdson, D. That's my answer.
Steve, do you know the answer?
I think Ando's on the right track, only with the last part of the surname, but I think it's going to be Nick Henderson, A for me.
All right, and the answer is Nick Henderson. So well done to Steve there. Let's move.
Trick one from Ben Darwin because
question.
he's got an Aussie city name and he's not born in Australia.
That's right. That is
it doesn't do good for his cohesion.
Well, do you know where he was born?
I'm not sure, to be honest.
England, I think. when I was reading it. But anyway, let's keep moving. Question 5. It was a subject of some controversy when at the beginning of the 2004 season, the Brumbies lock duo of Dan Vickerman and Justin Harrison defected to the almighty New South Wales Waratahs. Their replacements proved to be even better. Which of these Brumbies locks was the tallest? Is it A, Justin Harrison, B, Mark Chisholm, C, Radiki Samo, or D, Dan Vickerman?
This could be a trick one because Radiki Samo had a good throw. So you could have added on another maybe 10, 20 centimeters there. Depending on if you've just been to the barber or not. But I'm going to have a crack and say Dan Vickerman.
D. All right. Endo, what are you?
I genuinely was going to say Vickerman as well. I do love how the rest of the question was completely irrelevant to the question of how tall they were.
Dropping in your car's bias,
I'm going to go with as well D.
Yep. D or B was it? Sorry, Endo?
D. Okay. Dan Vickerman.
And the answer is Dan Vickerman. Well done. So final scores are Steve on 5 from 5. Ando got 3 from 5. So well done, Ando. I don't think you've got 4 yet, but you're probably doing higher than me on the overall chart. So well done there, Ando.
I'll take it, mate. Thank you very much.
Did you want to take us through the Super Rugby tipping comp, Ando?
Yeah, let's do that. And we'll dive straight into the actual preview for the Brumbies as well. So we'll dive straight in. As I mentioned earlier, go to the official Super Rugby tipping competition website. Just Google it and it will come up. And you can either search for Pick and Drive Tipping or R51WCHOD. And that is the join code. Make sure you get involved, have some fun, and see if you can barrack your team home to victory. If you're someone who's going to be choosing the Waratahs all season, then maybe you might get in trouble with some matches or the Force away from home. Who knows? But why don't we dive into the Brumbies, because they are a very, very exciting team from the Aussie perspective in 2024. And with a week to go, they're our final team in our preview series. So, as always, what we do is take a bit of a look through the 2023 performance for each of the teams before we then speak to the squad makeup, the ins and outs of the player signings, and then our predictions for what's going to happen throughout the series. So moving forward, Mitch, can we get into the 2023 recap? And that was, I was just waiting for it to come up, 10 wins. They placed 4th overall and they experienced 4 losses throughout the season. So that's pretty good. 10-4 and placing 4th. That did not give them a home semi-final, however, which was incredibly important in the scheme of things. We have identified their best performance being a 24-52 win away over the Reds in round 7. And before I go any further, Steve, what was it about that performance that you think made it such a significant moment within the season for them?
Yeah, so the Brumbies and Reds have been creating quite a little good rivalry over the last couple of years, and the Brumbies had struggled for a while up in Suncorp. In the early 2000s, I think they went up there and won a lot of their games, and in fact, they had a big streak against the Reds in general. But that win last year at Suncorp was their first in like 7 or 8 years up there, and to come away like that's fairly comprehensive. That was quite a good win for them in that regard.
Yeah, very well said. It was one of the kind of statement matches for the Brumbies throughout the season. And another one was early on in Super Round 2, the 25-20-ish victory against the Blues. That was really, really impressive. And the other key game that we've highlighted was the round 13 loss to the Force. Now, those key games actually tie into the takeaways that we've identified for 2023 for the Brumbies. And those takeaways were, number 1, they struggled against the top Kiwi teams. The Chiefs, the Canes, the Crusaders and the Blues at various points throughout the season, they struggled, and you expect the top Australian team to be matching up more than what we saw by the Brumbies against those top teams. And then a second point was that the resting policy hit them hard. So come round 13, it was the 3rd last game of the regular season, and the Brumbies needed to win the match away against the Force to secure their home semi-final, and they rested a few key players. And Mitch, as I say, the rest is history.
Yeah, that's right. They went over to Perth, and as we spoke about in our preview a few weeks ago, the Western Force absolutely smashed them in all regards in that game. So it was an unfortunate end to the Brumbies season. They did do well to get in to play that home quarterfinal, beat the Canes, and then make it to a semi. It would have been so much better for them to have been able to play that semi-final in Canberra, get the Aussie fans in and supporting them, as we saw that the fans really were what sort of spurred them on in that quarterfinal to get over the Canes late. But instead, they had to go to Hamilton, play the Chiefs, who were on point and rolled them there. Pretty clinical performance by the Chiefs, and then the Brumbies are bundled out of the competition in fourth. So a lot of learnings from that, I think, for the Brumbies coaching team and for some of the younger players. But it'll be interesting to see how those effects move into 2024. And there's already whispers coming out in the media through Alan Alatoa at the season launch last week that they've spoken about what they need to do differently throughout the season to make sure when they get to those finals at the end of the year, they're firing and they're able to do what they need to do to take that next step. That they've been good enough to get close the last few years, but what do they now need to do to get to that final, to get that one next step from the semis into the final and then hopefully win it?
Well said. And there's a couple of other things. One other thing I'll just quickly mention, and then we're going to run through the forwards and the backs for the squad, is the Brumbies seem to struggle at times to put teams away that they were better than. So you saw in the opening 3 rounds of the season, they beat the Waratahs 25-31, the Blues 20-25, the Brumbies 23-17, not getting a bonus point in any of those matches, where those types of things are the opportunities that move a team up from fourth to higher on the ladder to guarantee that home semi-final. So that'll be an area to work on moving forward. Now, for the forwards, what we'll do is I'll go through and read the forwards list, and then Steve, we'll get you to do the backs if that's all right, mate. So starting off with the props, you got Alan Alalatoa, Fred Kahia, Sefo Kautai, Blake Shop, James Slipper, Reece Van Neck, and Harry Vella. The hookers are Lockie Lonergan, Connell McInerney, and Billy Pollard. Locks, Nick Frost, Tom Hooper, Caden Neville, Lockie Shaw, and Darcy Swain. And in the back row is Jerome Brown, Charlie Cale, Ed Kennedy, Luke Reimer, Rory Scott, and Rob Valentini. Over to the backs.
Okay, in the scrum halves, we've got new acquisition Harrison Goddard, got your boy Ando Ryan Lonergan, and Clayton Thorne. In the fly halves, we've got Noah Lolosio and Dak Debrashini. In the centres, we've got another new name, Austin Anderson, Hudson Crichton, Len Ikitau, Ollie Sapsford, and Tamati Tua. And in the outside backs, we've got Declan Meredith, Andy Muirhead, Ben O'Donnell, Corey Hotline Toole, and Tom Wright to round out the squad.
Brilliant. So when we look at the actual ins and outs, it's fairly loaded towards the outs. So the departures are Tom Ross, who's come up to the Waratahs, Pete Samu, who's over in France, Nick White, who's over west, Nathan Carroll, Chris Fayo-Sortia, and Jesse Mogg, who has retired. And then the signings are Lachlan Shaw, Harrison Goddard from the Tars, filling that Nick White scrum half spot, and Austin Anderson. So it has been a relatively, in all honesty, underwhelming acquisition season for the Brumbies. Steve, as a diehard Brumby fan, what do you make of this pretty small list of signings, but in some ways actually equally small list of departures?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting in 2024 for the Brumbies. So a lot of the players have also been promoted from the squad. So you look at names like Reece Van Neck, technically was on a training contract last year and has been promoted to the first team. And I think Blake Shop might also be in that boat as well. So I guess what's also helpful is a lot of these guys got some good game time last year, particularly on those away games, which comes back to that resting policy. So the 2 games they had away last year in New Zealand were against the Hurricanes and Crusaders, and they took a good mix of experienced players and a lot of new guys that no one had really seen. So it was new for them. It's also a good learning curve for them in terms of the preparation for away games. So sometimes you get guys playing token minutes at home. So they sleep in their own bed all week and they can have all their family there when they take the field and things like that. So just being able to understand what goes into a week of preparation, particularly with travel. There's no direct flights from Canberra, obviously, so you've either got to go through Sydney or Melbourne to get over to New Zealand. So that just adds an extra few hours each time. And those younger guys, it's not just 80 minutes on Friday or Saturday. It's the whole week preparation they need to get the hang of. And it's like what Simon Cron said to you last week, Endo, about just that preparation of what they to do when they go away and not have distractions and the like to get in the way of a good performance on the weekend.
Yeah, turn the Twitter off, put the phone away.
I really hope I really hope that there's like a Bernie's bonk ban, because that's essentially what Simon Cron's brought into place for the Force. Is he's banned in a way, or he's limited or put expectations and restrictions around kind of cavorting outside of hours on Tinder and the like.
That's it, yeah.
So
I'd love to tell me about that one. I'm not sure how that works.
Yeah, neither do I, mate. Neither do I. But if we keep on going, Mitch, through our visuals and a presentation, we have identified 4 most valuable players, and there was no possible way that Ryan Lonergan was not going to be on this list. He's my boy. I love him deeply, and I'm sure that the love will be reciprocated one day. But we have identified 4 players. Ryan Lonergan is one, Rob Valentini is the other, James Slipper is the third, and Lenny Ikitau as the fourth. Now, what we might do is I'll speak to Ryan Lonergan, and then, Steve, I'm going to throw it to you and say, why do you think we've chosen these as one of the most valuable players within the Brumbies team for 2024? But, Ryan, with Nick White's move over to the Western Force, he is essentially he's the interim captain right now, whilst Alan Alato is coming back from his injury. But it's incredibly important that he has for a long time actually been stepping up and at times replaced Nick White as the starting 9 throughout the 2023 season, and has shown a really good development process over the last few years. His kicking's on point. He's got an excellent pass. His run game is improving, and his tactical kicking is very, very strong. So he's one of those players that is really, really significant in the way that the Brumbies play. But also his replacement players, Harrison Goddard and Clayton Thorne, they haven't had that much Super Rugby experience between the two of them. And so if Ryan Lonergan goes down or isn't able to play big minutes within a match, you've got a very experienced 9 coming onto play. So he's going to have to play big minutes well this season for the Brumbies to succeed. Steve?
Yeah, well said, Ando. Rob Valentini will be an interesting one in 2024. So with the departure of Pete Samu, I guess the natural move for him to be from 6 into 8, and with him as the new Johnny Eels medalist as well. So he's obviously been acknowledged by his peers as one of the not up and comers, but very valuable players in the whole scheme of things. But his move to 8, I think he plays there at the Wallabies level, so that move is fairly natural to him. And I guess it might just change the way the Brumbies play a little bit off the back. So Pete Samu played a bit wider, but Rob is obviously in a bit tighter, and just he'll love the pick and drive, and just he just does the dirty stuff. So he may not feature highly in tackles and offloads and things like that, but he will do the dirty work that really needs to be done, and that's obviously why he may have been seen as a Johnny Eels medalist as well.
James Slipper is another player we've got listed up there, and I don't think you can go through past any one of his experience on any Super Rugby squad and not notify him as one of the most valuable players, purely from the fact, without his experience, just his leadership capabilities as well. He's been Wallabies captain. He stepped in at times at captain for the Brumbies as well when Alan's not there. He's just a player that's is getting better and better with age. Now, it'll be interesting to see if he does play big minutes in 2024, knowing that he's come off a fairly large workload last season for the Wallabies and for the Brumbies, and that he's now looking towards the Lions series in 2025, whether the Brumbies look to manage his minutes and use him more as an impact player, potentially coming off the bench and going to some of their younger props to start games. It'd be interesting to see how they handle that. But you can't go past just the pure impact that he brings to a team.
Add on to that as well the fact that there's some injury concerns within the front row for the Brumbies. So you've got Sefo Kautai, who is out currently or recovering from an injury. Connell McInerney isn't available too. Alan Alatoa is obviously still returning. I think he's a month away from being fit. There just is there are a few injuries at this point. And Steve, do you happen to know any detail about when those players might be back? Was anything said today or mentioned at the fans' day today?
Not today, but I have heard Alan Alatoa is targeting the Waratahs game. I think maybe the first one. I think because they played 2 games this year, so I think it's round 6-ish, maybe. With regards to the other guys, I'm not too sure. But just like you said with the front row stocks, I don't know what's going on around the country. There's a few front rowers who are out long term as well. So it's a bit of a concern, with the whole S&C thing last year. So hopefully they're back up on board pretty soon because they're coming up against the New Zealanders. You can't have rookies up against men over there because it won't end well.
Completely agree. Now, I have selected Len Ikitau as the final most valuable player, and that's a pretty unsurprising inclusion, I think. The fact that he wasn't included in a Rugby World Cup squad by Eddie Jones is one of the most damning indictments against Eddie Jones's tenure. I do not understand how that man was not included. But when you actually look at the back line for the Brumbies, they have some really good players, a couple of game breakers, but not that many and not that much depth. So if we just quickly run through, say, the outside backs, you've obviously got Corey Hotline Toole, but it's only his second season, and a bunch of his first season was actually impacted by concussion, injury, and I wouldn't say he's the fully complete and developed back 3 player yet. Tom Wright was excellent, and I'm hoping he has another good season. He's probably one of the main strike players within that back line. Andy Muirhead is a solid Super Rugby player, but then you've got Declan Meredith and Ben O'Donnell, who don't have that much Super Rugby experience between them either. When you get into the centres, Austin Anderson's new. Hudson Crichton has shown some good moments. Ollie Sapsford and Tamati Tua are solid, but again, not game breakers. And then you got Noah/Jack with Ryan inside. And so my point within listing all of those players is to say, you've got solid performers in many positions, but very few high-quality international experienced players. And so having Len Ikitau fit, firing, and marshalling the players inside and outside of him will be incredibly important for this Brumbies team to play the way that we really believe that they are capable of. Mitch, anything you wanted to add to that, or should we track on?
Oh, I just think we also saw from a Wallabies perspective last season before Eddie started to turn things the way he did and play his silly mind games. But Len Ikitau was a mainstay for that team and for the past 2 seasons, really. And when he wasn't available through injury after that Argentina test, the stocks in the centres diminished significantly. So having a player of his impact for the Brumbies is massive, and the effect he will have on the players around him too. Like, as you said, Ando, not a lot of experience, even with some good, solid game breakers or some talented players around him, they still don't have a whole lot of experience there. So this is what, Len's 3rd season at the Brumbies?
I think it might be his 4th, but he came in on the back of Tavita Kurandrani, who's some big shoes to fill there. But also another good thing for Len is he's a left footer as well. And that a lot of that sometimes is overlooked, and it's sometimes a good out, getting out of those exit plays as well. So you can just hit the open side. He's not in the Jordan Bataya cannon category yet, but having the left footer sometimes is what you need to get out of the exit area.
Yep,
definitely.
So moving into the season predictions now, we've identified some general strengths, some general weaknesses, and then have suggested that they're going to be placing 4th within the finals ladder. Now, I'm the one that put that out there. I said 4th. And essentially, I said that because I was believing that you're going to have the Chiefs, the Blues, and the Crusaders, and the Brumbies as the top 4. I wasn't confident that the Brumbies would be consistent enough over the season to beat those top teams and get into 1st or 2nd. So it was really, for me, kind of a playoff between 3rd and 4th for the Brumbies, and I thought 4th was probably the most likely. Now, with that being said, let's just quickly talk to the strengths. Now, the strengths of the forwards is that they have an incredible amount of continuity within the squad. As an example of that, we have lost Pete Samu, one of the most beloved back row players in Australian rugby. And we are still to find out who's going to take on the shirt tuck mantle within Australian rugby now that Pete has left our shores. But within the back row, you've got players like Jerome Brown, Charlie Cale, Ed Kennedy, Luke Reimer, Rory Scott. They're all excellent back row players. And actually, more importantly than that, they featured quite significantly over the last 2 years and been getting a lot of experience. So I was quite impressed with that continuity and also the quality of their locks. So Steve, would you see that area as a particular strength, the forward continuity, or is there some other element that you would be identifying as well?
Yeah, the forwards would be an interesting one. Obviously, you mentioned a couple of injuries there that are a bit of a concern to start with, but you've got Reece Van Neck who can fill in for Alan Alatoa, and we know what he can do. His scrummaging has come a long way in just his first year. The locks will be an interesting one. Nick Frost should definitely be a starter. There's a bit of injury concern around both Caden Neville and Darcy Swain to start the season, from what I believe. But Lachlan Shaw, the newcomer, played both trials and didn't look out of place there. So I wouldn't be surprised if he may maybe get a start in the next couple of weeks once those other guys are coming back from their injuries. I guess the other thing we need to mention is also having Laurie Fisher there this year. We know what he can do for any team, particularly around the forwards. So it'd be interesting to see, like you said, with the continuity, whether that comes into this season with John Alungia there taking over in that role, along with and Ben Moen as well as another assistant coach.
Yep, very, very well said there. Now we move into the weaknesses. I identified the front row-ish. I only said that because of the injury concerns that have already been mentioned a bunch of times. So I don't think the Brumbies have a bad front line. I would just be worried if they received one or two more injuries in the first 2 or 3 weeks of the season. They'd really be struggling at that point. Right now, the reserves are capable of performing well, but they don't have much depth because they're already experiencing some long-term injuries that they're just waiting for players to come back from. And then, like I mentioned before, the backline players, I just don't think have that overall level of game-breaking quality that you need at the top level, and you can see in some of the Kiwi teams. So I think there's some really good players mixed in with a couple of excellent players, but I just don't think it has enough punch to be one of the top kind of 1 to 3 teams within Super Rugby Pacific. Mitch, am I being a bit harsh there, or do you think that's on the money?
No, I think that's pretty fair in looking at the Brumbies overall squad. I think when I look at them and compare their season to last year, 2023, and what they can look to do in 2024, we saw a bit of a transitional period for them in 2023 in that Bernie Larkham was sort of trying to change the way they played rugby. It wasn't so much the same style of play that we've come to expect from the Brumbies of just, pick and drives or mauling tries in tight every single week and week in, week out. Once you're in the 22, you kick it out and go for a maul. He showed that they had different strengths to their attack, that they were scoring tries out wide, that they were, spreading the ball and finding space, and that wasn't just reliant on that set piece to score points. He's already said this year that he wants to also play an attacking style of play and an exciting style of play to get fans back, and that maybe that's what they need to do to try and get more people attending the game in Canberra. So it will be interesting to see if they do take that sort of trajectory that they were going on last season. It worked for them, and they played good rugby throughout the season, and they finished in the top 4, which is exciting. But can they, taking that next step from the top 4 and making a final and potentially winning it? The squad that they've got is very similar to last season. We saw that through their ins and their outs, but they don't necessarily, as you said, Ando, have massive stars that are going to pull things out of nothing, like a Marika Korobetti, say, or a Mark Nwangani-Tuasi. They don't have those types of players. They have very good players who will play the right structure and the right system for the Brumbies and play consistently to that game plan. But I just don't know if this is the squad that's going to take that next step to change things and push into the top 2 and potentially win Super Rugby this season.
I think Corey Toole's probably the closest to one of those game-breaking players, as well as Ben O'Donnell's really impressed me with what I've seen from him on 7 circuit. Steve, who are you excited for as a player in 2024?
Like you said, there's only a couple of new guys in there, but I'm interested to see how Harrison Goddard goes. Just because that halfback spot, you need to have a good solid backup there. And like you said before, if Ryder Lonigan goes down injured, who's the next up as well? I think another thing we need to talk about last year, the defense was a little bit scratchy, I guess. Like there were games they won where they, it was a bit of a, you score one, we'll score two type of thing. So there were games that I can think of top of my head. There was the Waratahs game where Mitchie came down for, where it was in the 40s to 30s, and then there was the Moana game where they gave up 36 but scored 60 odd, and even against the Drua where it's never over until the ref blows his whistle because the Fiji just they scored 90-meter tries, and also that Highlanders game where it was like 48-30 something. So they need to tighten up the defense a bit. Like it's great scoring tries, but there was a lot of games that they could have done it a lot easier if their defense had tightened up. Like even that Hurricanes quarterfinal last year, they came from behind. But having said that, it's good to see that they can come back. So but in the past, there might have been 2 tries down at home, and then that's it. Heads down. The morale's out the window, but it just showed they were able to come back, go back to the game plan, or even modify it a little bit, and come home with a wet sail to get those points that they needed.
Moving on now to what is one of our favorite parts of this preview series is looking at the jerseys. And I think what we need to do is put out a graphic where we rank the Australian Super Rugby Pacific jerseys for 2024 from best to worst.
Just the Australian ones?
I'm going to be pretty harsh
because I reckon the Moana jersey looks great.
Oh, and you know what? Let's do the whole comp.
Just on a side.
Yeah. I am not a fan of this jersey. I look at it and I go, yeah, it's a Brumbies jersey. Cool, whatever. I'm not excited. Mitch, thoughts?
Yeah, look, if you held this up to the jersey last season, you probably wouldn't know that it was much different. Or the last maybe 5 or 6 seasons, it's very stock standard Brumbies. The only real difference I think this year is that it looks like O'Neill's has adapted the ASIC toilet seat collar, which looks a little bit weird. On that sort of graphic, it doesn't look too bad, but on the players, it just sort of looks out of place for me. I'm not a massive fan of that sort of that collar there, but apart from that, I mean, it's a Brumbies jersey. It does what it needs to do. I'll be interested to see what they implement for their away jersey. We don't have that release just yet, just the home one.
Yeah, look, and I want to be excited by a jersey. I want to see it and go, yeah, I want to buy that. And Steve, looking in your background here, you got a lot of jerseys, some ones that I really like the look of. I'm pretty sure I can see about 4 of these jerseys hanging up behind you, mate. Have you gone out and bought a few 2024 jerseys, or does it just happen to look exactly like 3 that you've got behind you?
Yeah, welcome to Rebel Sport. No, just kidding. It's interesting, like with the Brumbies jersey, they've tried to change it over the years. I went to like a blue maybe 10, 15 years ago, predominantly blue. And like most public servants down here, it wasn't received well. So I think the commercial department of listening to what fans want. But you look at that one on the screen there versus the original one, which you can sort of see over my left shoulder there.
Yeah.
That's the original milk one. So there's not too much difference, except it's got a better quality make. It's not stretchy like that one up there, which you can pull quite 30 centimeters. Good jersey grabbing tackle material.
Pull people in, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Good for props up there too. So like it's new but old, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And look, there's a lot that I really enjoy about the continuity of a heritage, and that is really significant within a community and for building that branding and for building that kind of buy-in. But at the same time, I don't know, I just wouldn't have bought a 2024 jersey if I was a Brumbies fan, because I would have been like, I've had
one thing that I will say about the Brumbies that they do really well in their jerseys is their connection to community. And that jersey that they released last year, which was like the club, it was for community round, but it was like the club jersey had all the different logos, and there was like 3 or 4 different jerseys, and you could get whichever names club on it. That's an awesome idea. Like the Waratahs have done things like that in having club names sort of written in the text of the number on the back of the jersey. But just the way that the Brumbies incorporate the clubs and the sort of the family element down there in Canberra is just awesome. I don't think any other Super Rugby club does it as well as they do.
And just one last thing on the jersey for this year. Obviously, last year the Brumbies sadly lost their long-time assistant manager, Gary Quinlivan, and it was mentioned that his name will be embroidered into the neck and the collar area of the jerseys for this year,
cool.
of the playing jerseys. So that's a nice touch. And he'll also receive 0-0 as in the list of players that have represented the Brumbies since day one. So that's a very nice touch.
That's awesome. Yeah.
What a hero. That's brilliant. Great commemoration from the Brumbies there. And one final thing I'll say is that the jerseys for the Waratahs cost $160, but the Brumbies cost $100.
Yep.
So there is a lot to be said for $60 off. So let that one sit in your hip pocket if you want it to. But gents, I think that brings us to the end of the pod. Mitch, was there anything we needed to finish with, or are we done, mate?
No, we're pretty much done. We've got Super Rugby kicking off this coming weekend. So round 1 does take place. We've got the Waratahs in Queensland playing the Reds. Where are the Brumbies playing in round 1?
They've got Melbourne up first, and that could be quite an emotional match with all the goings off down in Melbourne, off-field wise. So hopefully a deal's been done so the fans can get in and watch that match in person.
If there's one team I wouldn't want to be playing round 1 this year, I think it would be the Rebels. It's going to be a fired up affair. Very emotional, as you said. But if for those playing along at home, make sure you do join in on our tipping comp and get those tips in before round 1. We'll have our preview pods for round 1 out on Thursday morning. So make sure you check your feed for that as well. And yeah, we'll be back next weekend wrapping up all the action from round 1 of Super Rugby Pacific. Really excited. Can't wait.
Now, one thing that you guys don't know, but I'm actually not going to be available on Sunday next week. And Mitch, do you want to know the reason why I'm not available on Sunday next week?
Because you're going to Taylor Swift.
That is correct. I'm a Swiftie and I'm going to be there and I'm going to love it. So I will maybe send you guys a video from the stadium. But sorry, I won't be on the pod next week. Yes, genuinely, I'm going to Taylor Swift and I cannot wait.
Right. Okay. Heard it here first.
Yep. Keen, mate.
All right.
Keen, Steve.
Thanks,
I
Steve.
knew you would know exactly where I was going to be.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Joining us tonight,
for the chat.
Steve.
No problem.
Go well, team. Have a great one. Thank you so much, and we'll catch you next week. Bye.